not only was I not sleeping, I became incredibly fearful of wakefulness. So that combination truly became ingrained in me at that time. I didn't understand what was happening to me. So essentially from that point in 2021, I started trying any method, anything you can think of to resolve this problem. I tried so many different sleep efforts that I could probably fill an entire notebook with them. Some of them are quite comical, but I look back on them at this point and I can look at that time in my life with compassion and recognize that I was someone who was in a lot of pain and desperation and experiencing something that was very traumatic. And I needed to do anything I could to survive because I felt that I was dying, and just waking up feeling horrible. The symptoms that I was feeling, the extreme fatigue, the emotion surrounding how I was feeling, the sadness, the depression. It was like I would get up every morning and there'd be a dark cloud hanging over me, following me everywhere I went. Whether I was at work, whether I was with friends, I could never get rid of that dark cloud. It's a really tough time. Some things that truly stand out for me that were turning points for me in my recovery was to welcome, to be open to wakefulness, not to actually run from it, not to fear it, but to allow it to unfold naturally in my night. And if I felt fear, which of course I did, to gently allow myself to walk through that fear, which ultimately permitted me to then let go. So through experiencing that fear versus running from it, I was able to gently let go of that fear.
Welcome to yet another really special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Monica with us. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for providing me with the opportunity to share my story with the world. It means a lot.
Anytime. I'm sure so many people are going to learn from it. And we're going to hear not only of your journey through insomnia, but I want everyone to know that you're actually also a graduate of our coaching program. You're a coach. And if anyone wants to, see what you're up to or get in touch with you, how can they reach you?
Absolutely. Thank you. They can reach me at insomniareliefcoach.com. That's my website. And from there they will see different contacts. They can email me, call. There's various methods. I have social media channels, so many different ways to reach out.
Sounds great. And we'll put a link, of course, in the description as well. With that said,
thank you.
Tell us in your words, Monica, how did you start having trouble sleeping?
Well, my story begins in around, let's say, the spring of 2021. I did not have anything particularly stressful happening at that time in my life that I can relate this to. But one night I just had a really poor hours of sleep. It just kept happening on and off throughout the evening. I'd have 1 hour of sleep, then I couldn't sleep, then it, just kept going back and forth. And I didn't really think much about it. But then the following month, it happened again. And then I started to become more curious about, this is interesting. I normally don't have any issues with sleep. Why am I not sleeping through the night the way that I used to? And so because of that curiosity, I believe that's when the switch happened in my brain, where I started to become concerned about whether or not I was going to sleep. And I started sleeping even less, I'd say. So what began to occur after that was I'd sleep once or twice a week. And then I'd have no problems once or twice. The rest of the evenings, I would not sleep, or at least through the entire evening as I had previously, which then led to insomnia every single night of the week. And I was completely in the depths of insomnia at that point of my life.
So it was like this one kind of random night where you had like choppy sleep, where you slept very little. And then it seemed to like self-resolve. But a month later, you had one more night, and that's when you really kind of became like curious, and then scared, then worried, and that's kind of
Yeah.
how the cycle started. Is that right?
It's exactly what happened. Yes. And the more that I thought about it, the more anxious I became, and the more hyper focused I became on not sleeping. And I would say that that's when my obsession with sleep and trying to sleep, forcing sleep, occurred. I was absolutely desperate at that point. And I wasn't, not only was I not sleeping, I became incredibly fearful of wakefulness. So that combination um,
Yeah.
truly became ingrained in me at that time. I didn't understand what was happening to me. So essentially, from that point in 2021, I started trying any method, anything you can think of to resolve this problem. I tried so many different sleep efforts that I could probably fill an entire notebook with them. Some of them are quite comical, um, but I look back on them at this point and I can look at that time in my life with compassion and recognize that I was someone who was in a lot of pain and desperation and experiencing something that was very traumatic. And I needed to do anything I could to survive, because I felt that I was dying, and that if I didn't find that cure, so to speak, I would die. And some of the methods that I tried, just to name a few, various sleep hygiene routines, supplements, sleep medications, uh, essential oils, cherry juice, tea. Um, I tried hypnotherapy, EMDR therapy, saunas, red light therapy. Uh, you name it, I did it. So I was incredibly desperate, and each night was trying something new, or each day was about trying something new to sleep that evening. But I'd wake up the next day in complete despair because it was another failed attempt. And so each day, I began to fear the night. I didn't want the sun to go down. I would watch it through my window and start to panic. I began to feel fearful of my own bed. What was once a sense of comfort and rest that I just loved um, became a threat to me. I had never experienced that before. And I, in fact, would avoid my bedroom as much as I could, just because I did not want to look at my bed. Um, I would still go to bed in my bed eventually at night, but with resistance. So those were very difficult times. I also began to fear looking at the clock, because that meant I only had a little bit of time left, perhaps, to sleep before I had to get up for work, or maybe I didn't wasn't going to sleep at all. So I felt enormous pressure because I wanted to be productive and um, excel in my job. I also started to fear the silence in the night. It was incredibly quiet and lonely. Um, and then eventually I began to fear myself, because of the feelings and the physical sensations, the heart palpitations, the sweating, uh, just the intense anxiety that I had. At times was debilitating
Yeah,
during
yeah.
that time. Yeah.
In some, like, it sounds like after, a month after that first night, when you started having, back to back nights of little sleep, it sounds like you quite quickly went into like a mode of like being really anxious and trying things. Is that true to say?
Yes, I am a deep thinker. I tend to try to solve problems. and want to solve problems quickly and move forward. And that's what my brain was doing. My brain was trying to solve these problems for me as quickly as possible so that I could get back to living my life the way that I did previously. It wasn't long before I was actually forgetting what that felt like. Before this insomnia experience, I was sleeping 7, maybe 8 hours a night. 7 hours, I felt wonderful, and I was perfectly happy with that. And at that point, I was sleeping 2 or 3 hours per night, and just waking up feeling horrible. The symptoms that I was feeling, the extreme fatigue, the emotion surrounding how I was feeling, the sadness, the depression. It was like I would get up every morning and there'd be a dark cloud hanging over me, following me everywhere I went. Whether I was at work, whether I was with friends, I could never get rid of that dark cloud. Yeah, it's a really tough time.
Yeah. Which that kind of leads into the other question I had, which was about your daytime obligations. You were working at the time. How did that go?
I was petrified that I was going to lose my job because my job is incredibly demanding, and I wanted to do. I'm a perfectionist, as I think I said before, and I want to do all of my work to the best of my ability. And so that anxiety only about doing my job well intensified the fear of wakefulness, the fear of not sleeping. I was thankfully able to fairly quickly see that I was able to be productive and do my very best, regardless of how many hours of sleep I had the night before. That was a godsend to me. And the more that I experienced that, the more I was able to loosen the grip on that fear. And the same with, a typical day. Say that I was going to spend time with friends the next day, and I was fearful that I was going to be so brain fogged or fatigued that I wouldn't be able to engage the way that I wanted to and enjoy my day. I was able to see that I could have amazing days regardless of that. So I wasn't able to realize at that time, but now through your teachings, I know that I was teaching my brain that I actually could be safe regardless of the night before, and I could actually enjoy my days. And it wasn't about how many hours of sleep that I was getting. So I was able to be present, actually be present. And in being present, whether that's through my job, through being with friends, or any other activities that I was engaged in, I could truly forget about sleep and not let it dictate my life. And once I was able to see and make that connection, it really, I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but it became less important to me. I didn't think about it so much. I didn't have that hyper focus on any of that. If I had a bad day, I would wake up in the morning, or a bad night, I should say, of sleep the night before. I would wake up in the morning and I would acknowledge, yes, I don't feel great today because I didn't sleep well the night before. That's normal, but I'm not going to let it dictate my day. And I would make a concerted effort in the beginning, and I don't need to do that anymore today, but to just redirect my thoughts to whatever it was that I was engaged in at the time. And I would get so involved in that I would completely forget how I felt. And it no longer had that power over me anymore. And that was an incredibly freeing experience to have. And I do it every day now. I don't even think about it.
That's wonderful. And I was going to ask you, that realization that you could actually do well during a day and even enjoy a day after not sleeping much, did that come like little by little and over time, or did you actually see that pretty early on?
Pretty early on. Pretty early on. My time frame is a little bit fuzzy, but there were realizations that I did have to make later on that really did help me to engage in life more fully, because I was still holding myself back uh, to a certain extent from really living life the way that I had previously.
Yeah.
So I will absolutely share that and how I came about that later on. Um, and something that I do want to just mention about my sleep efforts at the time that I think is important for people to understand and know is that I was taking some sleeping pills that were not effective for me. One in particular would provide me with 4 or 5 hours of sleep if I was lucky. And the side effects that I experienced as a result of this one medication were debilitating. So I would wake up and I would feel extremely anxious, extremely depressed, and really in a space of despair. And I didn't make that connection. I thought, okay, well, maybe this is because I'm not sleeping enough and I'm putting too much pressure on myself. But I spoke to a friend about it, and thankfully, she has a background in working with people who take sleeping pills. And she said, I think that you need to try to get off of this medication. It's not helping you, it's hurting you. And it scared me. That particular medication, um, it doesn't have a black box warning, but I personally feel that it should, because I had some very dark thoughts in my life at that time when I was taking that specific drug, and I would never recommend it for anyone. Of course, since then, I've learned that sleeping pills cannot make us sleep, that only our natural sleep drive can over extended periods of time of remaining awake. They can sedate us, but they certainly can't make us sleep. And that was a powerful lesson for me to learn as well, that at the end of the day, they may help us to relax, but that's it. And we have to weigh out the pros and the cons. And for me, with that particular medication, the cost was too high. So
Yeah.
I stopped sleeping pills after that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it's helpful to know that sleeping pills
Mhm.
can lead us to feel, not, it can lead to a place where we may sleep longer, but actually not feel any relief or feel easier at all, which is tricky, of course. And I want to ask you, in regards to like living life and spending time with friends, etc. How did you tell your friends about what was going on, or did you keep it to yourself?
I did. I told them a lot. I was obsessed with talking about sleep. I told anybody that would listen. And unfortunately, none of those people, although very caring and concerned, had experienced what I had at that time. And they they couldn't relate. So it was more of, oh, uh-huh, that sounds terrible. I'm sorry you're going through that, when really I was just desperate for help. And unfortunately, that did make me feel even more isolated and lonely, because eventually I stopped talking about it.
I see.
Um, I did for two reasons. One, I realized that talking about sleep and my lack thereof was likely reinforcing the problem and the struggle, because I was thinking about it all the time. And the other piece was that it made me feel worse to talk about it and not get the support that I truly was looking for at that time and to speak
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you you know from kind of within yourself, you made a lot of like really helpful observations. You noted that you could do well even if you slept little, taking pressure down from sleep. You noted that talking a lot about sleep and paying a lot of attention, like bringing a lot of attention to it, could be tricky as well, which I'm sure
Mhm.
was really helpful for you. But basically, oh yeah, I had another question for you. Was like, during this journey, did you ever go see your doctor and go kind of the medical route?
Yes, I did. I'd love to share that with you. Before I do that, I just want to make another note with you, if that's okay, about something that became made my insomnia even worse, I'd say. I hit another hurdle in my life a year after I started having insomnia. So in 2022, I started to feel even more fatigued than I did before. It was just barely function type of fatigue. Getting myself out of bed was extremely difficult. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I knew that I had insomnia, but this type of fatigue felt much worse. And so it was at that time, a year after the insomnia started, that I contracted Lyme disease. And if anybody who has had Lyme disease, and they know that the exhaustion is just indescribable. So what ended up happening was I learned that Lyme disease can cause sleep disruption. Now, it doesn't cause insomnia, but it does disrupt sleep. And so essentially what occurred at that time is, through that sleep disruption that I was having from Lyme disease, it made me even more fearful of not sleeping, which then intensified my struggle with insomnia. So it was a vicious, incredibly painful loop that just kept going and going and going and wouldn't end. And I just at that point thought, there is no way out of this. There's no way. I don't know how I'm going to survive. Um, so at that point, I did feel that it was important, because of how exhausted I was, to isolate myself from friends. I wish that I did not do that, and loved ones, because I had nothing to give at the end of the day after work. I had put all my energy into my work, and at the time, I didn't realize that by saying no to the invitations that I had and becoming more of a hermit, I'd have to say that's exactly what happened in my home. I was harming myself probably more than helping, because it made me even more isolated in this experience. And it was an incredibly dark time in my life that I never would wish on anyone. So at that point, after I contracted Lyme disease and was coupled with this huge struggle of insomnia, I made a promise to myself that I was going to, once I was able to get on the other side, and if I could, make it my mission to help other people to recover from insomnia, because it was so painful. I didn't want other people to be alone in that recovery process, or to feel isolated. I wanted them to know that help is there, because I needed it at that time, and I wanted to be that for someone else. And I made that promise, and I was certain that I was going to stick to it.
Yeah.
So to thank you for letting me share that. I became very passionate at that time that I was going to find a way, no matter what it took. And I did see various specialists. I saw naturopaths. I saw various therapists. They all meant well, but unfortunately, they only could. They made promises that they could help me to resolve my insomnia, but they they eventually saw that it wasn't working, their methods, and I felt that they kind of gave up after a while on me. And I began to feel that I was the only person in the world that must be experiencing this. I must be broken in some way. I have some sort of disease that isn't is something that no one has seen before, probably, that is not diagnosable. Maybe I had cancer, or I had a brain tumor. Whatever it was, I felt like doctors weren't seeing me, hearing me, and specialists in the way that I needed. And one day, after a long wait, um, I finally got in to see a neurologist who specializes in sleep medicine. And I was so hopeful for this appointment. I was so excited about it because I thought he could pinpoint exactly what was wrong with me. And he looked at me and, pretty matter of fact, and I'd say probably a little cold, said, you don't have any medical condition at all. You have anxiety. And he handed me a pamphlet and he left the room. And I was just stunned and just beside myself. What? You were supposed to fix my problem. How is this possible? I sat in his office and I looked at the pamphlet, and it had a list of all the sleep hygiene techniques that are well known. And I had tried every single one, and none of them had worked for me. So again, I felt hopeless. But I continued to read, and on the very bottom of that pamphlet, in tiny letters, I'm not sure why, it said CBT-I, the gold standard to cure essentially insomnia. And so again, I felt incredibly hopeful. This was going to save me. This was going to teach me everything I needed to know to solve this problem. And so I went home that day. I did tons of research online. I scoured the internet and I looked for CBT-I therapists, those who specialize in that training, and I could not find anyone. I was shocked because how could CBT-I be the gold standard if we didn't have the providers to actually use those tools to help people who are suffering? So that was mind-blowing to me. And then I found Martin Reed's program. At that time, he specialized in CBT-I. I also found Dr. Greg Jacobs' course, and I found a app that I enrolled in that included coaches as well, specifically in CBT-I. I did everything that Martin Reed suggested, Dr. Greg Jacobs, and the coaches in the CBT-I app, the sleep restriction, getting out of bed. Some nights I was getting out of bed 3-4 times a night when I couldn't sleep. And it was just back and forth, back and forth. None of these methods that I was being taught actually helped me, unfortunately. And what ended up happening was they made me feel even more anxious and hopeless because I wasn't sleeping at all. And I was feeling like I was a failure at this. If this was the gold standard for insomnia, what else was there that was going to help me? And that was a very scary time, very scary. And I just want to point out that for some people, I've heard and I've read stories about CBT-I and how helpful it's been for certain people. And there's certain elements of CBT-I that I completely subscribe to, particularly reframing thought patterns that might be unhelpful to us, helping to, for instance, reframe catastrophic thinking, because that can certainly be very unhelpful as we recover from insomnia. So I love all of that. But the structure of the program and how rigid it is didn't work for me in any way, shape, or form. So I was at that time just walking in the halls of my house like a ghost, just feeling nothing was going to work for me, and even more anxious than I did before.
And this was about like a year into your story, or how far are we into the story?
So that was in 2023. So it was a couple of years into my insomnia struggle.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's you really pictured we can now picture you in a really difficult place where you're like you're isolated, you think you're a failure, you think nothing's going to work for you. It's you really
Mm-hmm.
showcase how difficult things were there. And
Mm-hmm.
we will, of course, want to kind of get to like, okay, what happened next, or what's the turning point there? But maybe before we go there, I wanted to stay a second on the like this extreme fatigue that led you to become like really, really isolated. And the way I often think about it is that there are many, it's sort of like sleep disruption. There are many, many things that can make us tired, including like various medical conditions, clearly, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's also when our brain kind of, just as it can misidentify wakefulness as a threat, it can identify like fatigue also like a threat. And that can lead to
Yes.
this like really difficult emotional struggle with fatigue that is, I think, often much more troublesome than the like just the fatigue in itself, right? Does that resonate?
Completely agree. Yes, absolutely. 100%. 100%. Yeah, absolutely agree. And that can be that can sort of feed into the traumatic experience that we have when we go through
Yeah.
this insomnia struggle, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just mentioning
Um,
that so, like, because I think some people, when they hear your story, may go like, "Oh, I'm really, really tired. I probably also have Lyme disease," but that's in all likelihood going to be a very small fraction of everybody who tunes into that.
yes.
And even those who happen to have Lyme disease, it may not be like that. That's the real cause for their struggle with fatigue, right?
Exactly. And that's why it's very important to me to differentiate and let people know that I had insomnia well before I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, and that Lyme disease disrupted sleep. It never created insomnia was fully embedded and ingrained in me before I was diagnosed. And there's a lot of medical conditions that can cause sleep disruption. Um, and we think that they cause insomnia, but it's not the case. It's not the case at all. So sleep disruption and having a hard time with sleep can be a symptom of a medical condition. So yes, but what I wanted, thank you so much for pointing that out. I just wanted people to know that there was a cycle that was created from a medical condition that caused sleep disruption, that increased my fear from that disruption, which ultimately increased the insomnia struggle. So it's very important, absolutely, that people know that difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Very well. And so, yeah,
Can
with
be,
that said, yeah, I guess just take us further in your story. You like
yeah.
it's with 2023, you're in this really difficult place. What happens next?
Yes. Yeah. So, pretty soon I'm about to discover your teachings, which changed everything for me. But before then, I want to mention that I was invited to a birthday party with some very close friends of mine, which was a huge revelation to me that evening and began to change things for me as well. So during this birthday party, the night was going very well. I was very present, but as the clock struck and it got closer to 9 o'clock, as it got later and later, and I started monitoring the time, I started to get very panicked. And I was no longer present. I couldn't be. I was in fight or flight mode. And I paid my bill and I said, I have to go. I raced home, very anxious. And when I got home, I realized that I shouldn't have left the party early because it didn't help me at all in terms of being able to sleep because I didn't sleep that night either. So, in realizing that, I recalled what was the biggest takeaway from Martin Reed's program for me at that time, which was to live your life the way that you did before you began this insomnia struggle. Don't say no to invites, go spend time with friends. Do whatever it is that you did before. Don't let sleep dictate your life. Whether or not you sleep that night, just continue. And I made that decision that night that I was going to accept every invite that I had going forward. And in fact, I was going to ask people to do things the way that I had before. And that was another huge part of my healing process from insomnia. So I just wanted to share that because I think it was incredibly important to do,
Yeah.
to start
Well,
living again.
that's great. And you kind of heard Martin say this, but it sounds
Yeah.
like when you got home from a party, you realized I did exactly what he said not to do, and it kind of like really clicked at the time, right?
Yes, yes. And it was unnecessary,
Yeah.
completely unnecessary. All the physical sensations, all the anxiety, all the thoughts. Yeah. So I thank him for that. Um,
That's
and then after that, I went back to the drawing board after that evening and I started doing research again. And that's when I came across your videos on YouTube. And I became obsessed with your videos. I was listening to as much as I could. I bought all of your books on Amazon. I studied them. I just completely delved into your teachings, and I just had a huge aha moment when I realized that it wasn't about trying to do any one specific thing to sleep, that I, in fact, didn't have to do anything at all to sleep. At first, I felt a little puzzled by that and a little nervous. Like, well, what does that mean? I don't have to do anything at all to sleep. I don't know what that means. In fact, I don't know how to do nothing, because I was so used to trying to solve problems and allowing my brain to solve any problem that came before me. How can I do that? So, through your teachings, I was able to learn so many wonderful things that I'm not able to cover in this one interview, but some things that truly stand out for me that were turning points for me in my recovery was to welcome, to be open to wakefulness, not to actually run from it, not to fear it, but to allow it to unfold naturally in my night. And if I felt fear, which of course I did, to gently allow myself to walk through that fear, which ultimately permitted me to then let go. So, through experiencing that fear versus running from it, I was able to gently let go of that fear and be open to whatever the night brought me. And over time, through your teachings, I was able to learn that even though I didn't have to like being awake, I could actually do things that were either neutral, just maybe reading a book or something like that, or things that I actually enjoyed during my wakefulness, like catching up on my recent favorite show or something like that, that I didn't necessarily have time to do during the day or even the evening because of my other responsibilities. So I began to actually look forward to that time versus fearing it and enjoy my evenings. It was time that I had to myself. Um, so my perspective completely changed. Um, so over that time frame, I was able to sleep some nights, and then I experienced some speed bumps. And for me, that was terrifying because I thought at that time, I must be relapsing. I must be at square one. What do I do? Do I have to go back and learn everything that I did before? But through your teachings and my continued learning of your material, I understood that I wasn't at all at square one. I was actually exactly where I was supposed to be. It meant that I had a lot more awareness and education and insight than I had previously, and that I was well on my way to recovery because I was experiencing some really good nights of rest, but yet I was having some bumps along the way. So there was a lot of progress happening. And through loosening my grip around this experience and allowing it to happen versus trying to control it, over time, those bumpy nights went away. And I was able to sleep peacefully, one night after another after another. And so now, today, I'm able to look at it through a different lens. I have some bad nights of sleep, like everybody does. Nobody is a perfect sleeper. But I look at it through a completely different lens of, okay, I had a bad night's of rest, just like everybody else. It doesn't mean anything. I'm safe, and I know that I'm still going to have a good day today because of how many other days that I've had previously where I didn't sleep. So it's been an incredible freedom for me that I haven't had ever before. And I just want to thank you so very much, because you brought us through your teachings where CBT-I couldn't. By teaching us about ACT-I and mindfulness, that changes everything. And I feel like the entire world needs to know about this. If I could, I would shout from the rooftops. It's not just CBT-I. I personally feel that ACT-I, mindfulness, and elements of CBT-I, particularly the reframing of our thoughts that can be unhelpful to us, combined is the true gold standard for, insomnia recovery. And I feel very passionate about that.
I'm so glad, of course, super glad that you found our way that was so helpful for you. And I also hope that with time, more and more people will find our way, and then maybe one day it will be recognized as like, the gold standard. Who knows? But I think the most wonderful thing is that we can see that it's not just about sleep, right? This it's almost like an approach to life that can help in so many other areas. So which kind of segues nicely into asking you about that. Did you find that what you learned going through the struggle with sleep, leaving the struggle with sleep, was helpful in other areas of life?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And I still continue to learn. So essentially, what I think I've learned the most is when I'm experiencing fear regarding whatever that may be, I can now understand that it doesn't have to, it's not a threat. It's not something scary. It's not something that has to be anxiety provoking or debilitating in any way. I'm safe. And if I look at it and I'm able to welcome that fear and experience that fear more fully versus running from that experience, it's so much easier to move forward and move on than if I had run from it and not faced it head on. So, in all areas of my life, any new challenge that I might be afraid of, or say, an interaction with someone that might create discomfort, I welcome the discomfort now. Okay, what is it that I'm feeling? How can I face this fear, breathe, move through it, and let go? And then once I'm able to do that, it's almost as if I feel like I'm a brand new person because I'm clear-headed and can handle any difficulty or conflict that's before me. So that in of itself has been also a true gift to me. And I thank you for that also.
Oh, anytime. It's so wonderful to hear you say this. And I was actually remarking earlier on how you shared how you had started approaching emotions like fear this way, and that you then applied the same approach to speed bumps, which is like, the interesting thing to me here is that the same teachings apply kind of in the micro, in the kind of details, and in the big picture too. Like when it comes to like a speed bump, we can be like days or longer where we're like, we again have some struggle. Well, the same approach to one single emotion that we have at a single time, like fear, is the same thing that will help with something like a speed bump, right? It's very, very
Yes.
interesting that.
Yes, you can apply this to anything, anything. It's wonderful. And, not only do I want to just show such gratitude to you, I feel it every day for what you've done for the world. And I hope that it continues to grow because people need to hear you across the globe. I also want to thank you for all the testimonial videos that you've put on YouTube because those success stories gave me hope. And one in particular that I want to mention is Coach Christian's testimonial. That was the first testimonial video that I actually watched, and it was incredibly moving. When I watched that video, I felt seen. I felt like I was no longer alone, and there was someone out there in the world that was experiencing exactly what I had been. And so when I enrolled in the sleep coach school a year later, not only did I have an incredible experience and education through your school, and I'm so grateful for that, but I also was mentored, just so happened, by Coach Christian himself, which is amazing. So I also want to express my sincere gratitude for his mentorship because through your education and his mentorship, I've become the coach, the sleep coach that I am today. And without you, I don't know where I'd be, truly. And you saved my life. I truly want to thank you for that, Daniel. I really mean that.
That's amazing to hear, and I know Christian will also be super, super glad to hear this. And
Yeah.
you know, there was something that I was about to say, but now this what you said distracted me from that.
You're off topic.
But I do remember another thing I wanted to just. Oh yeah, there it came to me like it always does. Like it came back to me. Like I was gonna say, yeah, no, I'm so glad to have this chance to share all these stories with the world, like because these successors are so powerful. And I was going to say, there is, although the themes are very similar, there's always details that are like a little different. And in your story, for example, I know a lot of people will resonate with, because your story is one of, there was no clear stressor. There was no, like, it wasn't like, oh, obviously I was super stressed at that time. It's kind of like random. Like probably
Yes.
you were maybe a little stressed, or there was some sleep service. Something was going on that caused you to have a choppy night, but it wasn't a big thing in your life. It's like this insidious, like mysterious start. And knowing that that's also not uncommon for people is going to speak
Yes.
for,
Exactly. You would think because it did happen during the pandemic that was the stressor, but no, it wasn't. It wasn't. I had already gone through stress the year before with that, and I had kind of come to terms with it. So yeah, there was nothing that I could
Yeah.
identify. And yes, that is a very common experience for a lot of people. And I think that that's confusing for people too, if they can't identify that one thing that caused it. But
Yeah, exactly. Just maybe to say 1 second longer on that is, like you said, so most of our stories is like people say, oh, this happened and I was stressed, this happened and stressed. And then if people continue to hear that, they can think like, oh, for me, there wasn't a big stress. So that must mean my case is different. But it isn't. Sometimes it is just for some random reason we have choppy sleep. We never know why, but it's kind of like the reaction to that and how we think of it that matters. Always matters in the end. So.
exactly. Yes. Yes.
And maybe, last question from me is, if you could go back in time and tell yourself something when you started having trouble sleeping, what would you tell yourself?
I would say, I would tell myself that I'm not broken, that my brain is trying to protect me from what I perceive to be a threat. And this is showing my brain that it's doing exactly what it needs to do, right?
Yeah.
But I've kind of taken it another route, even further, and that there are some things I'm going to be learning along the way that are going to be life changing.
Yeah.
I would also tell myself to practice self-kindness and it's so incredibly important. I can't emphasize that enough because there were days when I was incredibly judgmental um, on whether I slept or not, how much sleep I was getting. That's completely unnecessary and doesn't help in this recovery process. So, practicing self kindness and self compassion, and to be patient in this experience, because as I've mentioned earlier, insomnia for some people, and it was for me, can be incredibly traumatic. And so, we need to allow ourselves that space and that time to heal. And to give myself that would be something that I'd want to tell myself, that it's a normal experience. You're not different. There's millions of people in the world that are just like you. And you will heal, and to just keep going. Keep
Yeah.
going.
That's amazing. I think that would have been so helpful. And now it is helpful to a lot of people who get to listen to this. And it, in some way, it's not only, yes, you're right, not every single people on the planet will go through an insomnia struggle, but not,
Mm-hmm.
but we are all the same. It's not like you are belong to just like a few people who are, not only do you belong to like the millions of people who do struggle with insomnia, but you belong to the humanity, and we all have, we all go through this in some shape or form,
Yes,
right, in your life. So we're all connected. We're all the
exactly.
same. It's like,
And that's the thing too, Daniel, about the sleep coach school, the education that you provide to students who enroll in your program, your sleep app. Um, I think that a huge takeaway for people who do this is a huge realization once they find your program is that they are not alone anymore. Huge piece in this recovery. Um, that's how I felt when I found you. Okay, thank God. I'm not alone. It's not just me. We can't all be, have a medical condition or be broken. We're not.
yeah.
We're all perfectly normal people just struggling with something.
Absolutely. And I actually came up with like one final question, which is like you mentioned earlier that there's so much, so many realizations, so many experiences you could talk about that we don't have time for today. Are
Yes.
you already sharing those in some shape or form or on social media or something, or are you planning to share like insights and in teaching
Yes,
something? Yeah.
yes. So my website is up and running, yes. And of course, you can book one-on-one coaching through there. And I also offer coaching and support in between sessions in various ways. I have different methods for people if they feel comfortable um, via Zoom. That's great. If they don't, it can be via phone, it can be via WhatsApp, it can be via texting, email, whatever feels most comfortable for them. So there's various ways that they can reach me. And I am on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. There's one more. I'm still working on them right now. And yes, my goal is to continue to develop those over time. I've already started coaching people. I'm thrilled about that. I work with people all over the world. So it's been a very exciting time for me, and I can't wait to see where this leads me.
Amazing. Sounds wonderful. Well,
Yeah,
let's conclude there, Monica. Thanks so much for being a guest and sharing, and we'll be in touch,
thank
of course,
you.
anytime.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Hi, it's me, Coach Daniel, and I hope that you found a ton of value in the video that you just saw. Now, if somebody would ask me, hey, Daniel, what do you think would really help somebody who has tuned in to a lot of the videos, who understands a lot, but who's just not seeing things change for them? I would say contextualization, discourse, to talk to somebody who understands what you've been going through, that you can ask questions to, get a reply, ask a follow-up question, get another reply, etc. That conversation so often starts to clarify things and really kickstarts your journey towards peaceful sleep. And one way you can have such a conversation is by booking a call with one of our coaches. In fact, you can head over to our website, thesleepcourseschool.com, and you can see which coaches offer calls and check out their individual success story to see if their story relates with you, and you find that connection that leads you to see that this is a person that I could work with. This is a person I would talk to. And then you can book a call, and that could be what really kickstarts your journey to where you want to be.